Live. Hello. So, today I decided I would do a bit of programming. There's a little toy application I want to make, just kind of for fun. Just make an application every now and then. So first up, I've got my this is called DIA. It's a flowchart tool. I figured I'd just start with getting something out to get an idea of what I'm trying to build. At a high level, what I want to make is something that takes in some information, like a bunch of different fields, and then prints it up on the screen like in a pretty format. So it's like a character sheet generator, basically. So I'll put in a bunch of information in like a file, and then I could just run the application. It'll pop up. It'll look nice. Maybe I could have it act like a flip book, so I can switch between pages. Don't know. We'll see when we get into it. So let's start with the basics. It looks like the flowchart ones here are a bit different than I'm used to. So where is my start task? It's usually this, from what I'm familiar with. That's okay, we'll use it as a start. Okay. So from here, we want to start. We just want to run the application. Okay, and we'll also use this as our end. Complete. So in between here, what do I want it to do? Well, I'm going to need it to display the sheet. But before it can display that sheet, I'm going to need it to format the information. Oh, that's interesting. We'll need that anyway. Oh, I've switched tools apparently. Here we go. Format information. Oh geez, I've lost control of the application. I'm just progressively zooming in further. Okay, let's get back over here. Text on here. There we go. Okay, format the information. Okay, and then as well over here. If we're going to format information, we need that information to come from somewhere. So let's read the information in. That's kind of the order of it, I think. I'm not a big fan of how this application formats things, but we'll try to make it look half decent. So let's get our connector. Don't want a poly line, I just want a regular line. There we go, with an arrow, okay. And then another line from here to here. Line from here to here, and line from here to here for now. We may have some extra information in here later. So that's kind of the gist of it. It's pretty simple, right? We just want to start with the basics. So I'm going to switch over to Eclipse. Now this is an application I'm familiar with, so hopefully I won't end up zoomed in at 3200%. Let's see, looks like my menu doesn't pop up when I'm clicking on these buttons up here, but I'm just going to go to File, New, and I'm going to create a new Java project. Alright, and in here I'm going to type in my project name, character, sheet, generator. I'm just going to use all my default execution environment stuff, and it's going to create a source package. It's going to create a module, discouraged module name by convention. They usually start with a lowercase letter. Fine. Character sheet. I'm just going to call it CSG for the module. So this is a module. I don't really need this. More importantly, I need my main. So let's get class. None of these pop-ups are showing over on OBS. Let me see. If we add another window capture. We'll see how these stick to it. So within here, I'm going to put it in the package. For now, we'll just leave that at default. We can format it and clean it all up later. So for now, I just want main. It's just going to be a simple, very simple application. So we just need a main. Must declare package because this is associated with module CSG. All right, fine. We'll make a package. Package, call it com. Okay, so we're in our com package and we've got our main class. We've got a run method here. So we're just going to test this real quick. Make sure that everything is plugged in correctly. And I'm just going to do a run. And we get a hello world down here in the terminal. Oddly, my music bar was showing there for a second. So, sys out hello world, and then we get down here in the text pop up. Okay, so now that we've confirmed that we're up and running in an environment, I'm going to get rid of that. And let's go back to our flowchart and take a look at what we need. The first thing we need is to read in information. Alright, where are we going to get this information from? We could do a dummy and just start with some simple strings within here, and then later on upgrade that to something that'll read from a more sophisticated source, like a JSON file, I'm thinking. So let's start with some strings. Let's say like name. Let's have like a kind of information can we write here about me as a character. Age, you know, let's just put a question mark. It doesn't really matter. I'm not a very important character. We'll put in some more characters that we can find online later. And let's just leave it at that. We'll get 2 different fields. If we can do 2, then we can do any, right? So let's make sure this is formatted as a number, just for testing. All right. And that is basically it. That is our read stage, simplified read information. So now we need to format that information. Again, we don't really need that. So next is we want to display something. So if we want to display something in Java, what can we do? Well, first of all, we can echo it and just print it to the command line. Sys out, I mean. But that's not going to help us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on the net. Let's see here. Go on the net, and I'm just going to look up a simple Java. Let's see, Java UI library. Just see what's common out there today. Because, you know, every time you come back to code, there's new libraries out there. Libraries have changed. It's not a bad idea to look it up and see what's out there. So, looks like there are a couple. There's Swing and SWT. Swing is part of Oracle Foundation. I'm just going on the Wikipedia page here. And then there's the standard widget toolkit. Let's see. There's also, there used to be J-frames, but I think they might have gotten rid of those, or maybe they're deprecated. So, since Swing seems to be recommended, let's take a look at Java Swing implementation. And we're also going to need to find the library for this, so I'm just going to look up Java Swing library. Let's look for it on Maven. Yep, okay, so that's on the Maven repository. So we're going to come back to our application here, and we want to set this up to work with Maven. So let's see if we can right-click on this. And how do I want to do this? Oops. Let's say if we go to this, we can actually start this over because I don't want a normal Java project. So let's delete this project. Delete the whole thing on disk. Alright, and I'm going to go to File, New, and when I search for project in here, I'm just going to search for Maven, and I'm going to choose Maven Project. And that'll give us some base files to work with so we can import things more simply. Group ID, let's just call this Sire, and let's put this up on screen as I'm filling it out. Not that one. Let's see. Is it this one? Nope. Keeps going back to my audio. How about this one? That's 2 eclipses. It's odd. I would like to show these pop-ups. I'm using a Windows screen share source. So if I go to the properties, the capture method is switched. So if I set it to Windows, maybe this will work now. So when I open up File, New, Project, no, none of this shows up. What can we do? Let's look at the properties again. If we use automatic, capture the cursor. Does this work? No? I don't want to share my whole desktop here. But that might be what I have to do. But for now, I'm just going to try to add a new window capture, and I'm going to tell it I want to capture this window down here. It doesn't look like it can be captured. Alright, so let's just try to get through it quick then. So I want a Maven, I'm going to file, new project, I want a new Maven project. I'm going to create a simple project. I'm going to give the group ID as my channel name, the artifact ID is just going to be CSG. The name will also be CSG, and I'm just going to finish there. And now I've got an extra large window capture showing everything. So let's remove that. And now we've got a CSG project here. Okay, and we've got our pom.xml. So now in here I can define that we want to download Swing. Let's see. So I'm just going on a search engine, Java Swing Maven, and just want to use the standard Swing API. Well, let's take a look at it. So let's take a look at implementing Java Swing user interfaces. Since it's Oracle, it actually may be built into the JDK, which is fine. We need Maven set up anyway. So implementing the interface. Now I'm on Oracle Docs here. Let's share this window. Window capture. This Mozilla Firefox. Put this up on screen. Alright, we'll just leave it like that. Okay, so this is where I'm working from. So this takes me to Docs, Oracle Docs, and let's take a look at this. So, implement the Java Swing user interfaces, understand JDeveloper user interface design tools, Java Visual Editor, in which you can click things. Click the Design tab of the Visual Editor. By right-clicking the file in the Navigator menu editor, this is a little past the point that I'm at. So let's try again. Java implement Swing library. Or let's do, here's a Java Swing tutorial. Difference between AWT and Swing, I'm not concerned about that. Java Foundation classes are a set of GUI components. I don't really need the architectural overview on this. So, yeah, it looks like it's part of Java X. And, oh, it still uses JFrames. Okay. So this is still JFrames, but it's, I guess, under a new library. So, let's go back to here. And it looks like we won't need to implement anything. So we'll just make a new class, get our main set up again. And then within main, we're going to want to create a, let's get our variables back here. And then let's get a JFrame. Let's just base this off of the sample. So new JFrame. Check our imports. Here we go. And then we want to create a button, so it's called a JButton. So we can create an instance of a click button. If we make it here, I think this is actually the text that's on it, not that that's a click. And then we could set the bounds on it. So if we look at the bounds here, it's XY width height. I'm just going to pick some random numbers here. Okay. And we're going to add that button. Here we go. Looks like JButton here extends abstract button, which extends JComponent. Okay, so we can add any components to the frame, and the button is a component. Okay, and then we can set the size of the frame. So we want the width and height. Let's go with, well, we want it to be bigger than the button, so let's go with 600, 600. And then we want to set the layout to null. We're not using any layout managers, and then make the frame visible. We'll find out what this is later. And this obviously makes it visible. Alright, let's take a look and see if this runs. Alright, so window capture. Yes, this guy here. this is what we've got running now. It's about this big, and it's got a big old button on it. The button looks like it acts like a button, but we don't really need a button. So, I'm going to close that. And we're going to modify this, because now we don't want the button, right? We want just text. So, if we look in the swing library here, by going back out into the net, and we just look for JavaX swing, that should bring us to the Oracle docs, and from here we can check out all the different things we've got. So these are our classes. It looks like we want the ones that'll start with J, just based on pattern recognition. So there's the button, which is a push button, a checkbox, a menu item, a color chooser, provides a pane of controls designed to allow a user to manipulate and select a color. We don't really need that. Combo box component, desktop pane, dialog, and editor pane to edit various kinds of content. File chooser, formatted text field. That looks like what we want. So I'm just going to copy this, put this away, come back over to here, and we're going to get J formatted text field. Text field 1. Make a new instance of this, get our import set, and then take a look at the constructors that are available in here. So by default, we've got it so that enable events, focus event tasks, set focus loss behavior, formatted text field takes in an object, initial value for it, okay, take in a format, okay, take in a formatter. It's got lots of different options here. Okay, let's see if we can just do something very simple. Text field 1 dot set. All right, we could set action command, alignment, bounds. We'll want to do that. Cursor, disabled text color, set enabled. Focus, we'll want to set the font. So just kind of, shoot, even these pop-ups aren't working. Alright, it looks like we're going to have to share the desktop here. Display capture. This main capture can't be captured. That's not an option. It's pretty frustrating that I can't get these different pop-ups from the window to show. Slideshow. If we do window capture, that's not going to do anything. And Eclipse properties doesn't seem to care. Don't know what that button does. Yeah, it's not getting any pop-ups. All right. Well, I'm just gonna have to be careful and read out what I'm seeing. So I've typed set here, and I'm looking at the autocomplete, and just scrolling through the list. So there's a set bounds that we're gonna need. I'll just call this out now. Looking at all the setters again. What else do we want? There was font. So if I look at set F, set font, that'll come up. I'm just going to pick out some methods that look like they'll be useful to us. So there's font. There's an enabled that I hope won't require too much. There's a foreground color, which implies that there is a background color. Okay, just going through the list. What else do we have? There's different alignment options. It's nice to have that built in. There's location, margins, name, I'm not sure we'll need that. Selected text color, size, text. This is the one that we mainly want here. Let's start with name. Let's set our bounds to just something within the window. Let's get rid of this button and instead add our component text field 1. Now, these foregrounds and backgrounds take in color objects. So let's create a color. Is this a, no, this is an enumeration, or it has some static entries to it. So just by doing color dot, I'm now getting some options. Let's just go with black text on a white background. And then the font, let's see if we can do this as well. Font dot, we'll take Roman baseline. No, let's do true type font. That sounds fun. But no, let's go with just serif. Alright, that is not valid. The method sent font is not applicable for the argument string. This is just returning a string. That doesn't help. So let's take a look at the set font constructor. It takes a font. If we look at the font class, what can we do? We need a font. There's a lot here. All right, let's use the outline. Font over here. Just creates a new font using the name, style, and size, where style is integer bitmaps that may be code plain or bitwise union of bold. Okay, let's try this. So we want a new font that is using serif 0, and then what was the last parameter there? It was size. Size using point. So we'll just go with like 12-point font. Alright, that resolves our compiler error. We've got the field added, it's all visible, so let's go up and run it. Alright. And then here, we've got a new window now. It looks like this. Okay, it's just got my name on there. It's just text. Looks like we can select it and highlight it. It's kind of a text box, I guess. Can we type in it? We can. We don't want that to be the case. We could even clear it out, so we'll have to mess with the settings on this text box. So let's see what we can do with that. We've got text field 1. Let's look at that enabled method here. Take a look at the enabled method, and it sets whether or not this component is enabled. The component that is enabled may respond to user input. So perhaps by setting this enabled to false and then running again, and let's see if I can pick that up again. Takes a minute to update for some reason. So now we've got this. It's no longer enabled, but the font has it's really grayed out, as if you're not allowed to touch it. Which is not exactly what we want, because now it's messing with the color, right? The color was supposed to be black, but now it's kind of really gray blue. Alright. So, are there any other methods in here? Text field 1, let's see. We'll scroll, bounds, caret, columns, cursor, disabled text color, set the current color to use to render the disabled text. Maybe we could use that. If the default there is Doesn't mention what the default is here. But if the default is that light bluish color, that may be what's doing this. So let's run again. And let's get this to pick up again. There we go. And yeah, we can see that now it's got the proper color. Alright. So with that in mind, it looks like we probably don't even need the foreground color there, because we just want the disabled text color. And then we can keep the background color here. Alright, and instead of, so we've got name, and then we'll want another one, right? So we're just going to copy all this for now. Oops, what the heck did I just press? I want the rename button. Alt-Shift-R. There we go. So we can refactor this to just be text field 2. Alright, and it'll have all the same stuff, except in this case we're going to put the age, and then for the positions we're going to go down by about 50, so, or at least 50 rather, so let's go down 100, and run it again. And also remember to add it down here as part of the frame. Alright, and let's see what we got. Takes a few seconds for the capture to find it, but it's done what well, it's done it. Maybe not with the expected output. Go. So since I increased the X and Y, it's kind of this staggered approach now. Really, we're going to want that to be a list, right? So let's just make sure we're not messing with the X here. That can stay as 25. And then if I just do that a real quick rerun, yes, they're aligned now. All right. So we've got text coming in through variables and getting shown up on the screen. Let's take a look at our diagram again. See how far we are. So if we're displaying sheet, but I would hardly call it formatted. And really the reading information isn't really happening, and really we want more here with this display sheet. There's not much information on what it means to display the sheet. But what I had in mind was a kind of picture background or a color background or something that you could plug in, and then it will then format where all the fields are supposed to go. So let's go back to there and let's set this up in a way where we can handle this more modularly, because we're going to need to add a bunch of these and I don't want to copy and paste this every time I want to add a new button. So let's think through this. So we've got this, basically, that we want to repeat each time, and we want to get that object back so that we can add it to the frame. And we want to automatically go from one position down to the next so that they don't overlap and we don't have to define the position for every single one. Though it's also not a problem to find the position for each one, because we can just set a few constants. So let's try starting with that. So let's go up to main here and let's create a new class. We'll call this class constants. Public static final. Public static final font. The name will be, let's call this one the label font, and it will be equal to this. Okay, so we're going to put all our constants in here so that we can reference them back all throughout the application. That way we don't end up with any tricks like some with 12-point font and some with 11 and some with serif and other nonsense. So let's move all those over here. So we've got the font. We'll want the color. Color is going to be the label text color. In this case, black. And then we'll also want the color for the label text background, which will be white. Okay. And then we're going to want to set we could start with that. So let's copy all these in over here. So instead of using new font each time, we use the label font constant, and instead of using that, we'll use color here. And I have to reference the class. Just give me a second. Label text color and label text background. We should call that BGC for short. For background color, there, that there, and then to reference this, we need to go to constants dot, and just paste that in at each point. Save all our files here. And how are we doing? Label text color cannot be resolved because I don't want a font color, I just want color. There we go. Alright, and then if I rerun that real quick, we get the same output as before. Okay, so just making sure that it still stayed the same. Okay, so now those are constants. That'll make it easier to automate the creation of these different text fields. So what do we need now? We're going to want to put this up on the frame in relatively fixed positions. So one way we could do that is in our constants we could define the position of each field. And I think that's okay, especially because in our application we're only going to have a fixed number of fields, right? It's only going to be maybe 10 fields, and it's going to be on a pretty fixed palette, so it's a bit tedious, a bit of an eyesore. It's not really expandable, but when you have a really simple use case, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking the simple route. So we need to define the bounds here. Now I want to see if there's a different object we can use for this that we can instantiate. Let's see. Just control Fing for set bounds throughout the file to see if there's any. I think there was a rectangle we can use. Yes. Okay, so if we create a rectangle object as a constant, public static final rectangle, and we call this label bounds, and we create a new rectangle, and then we go in and look at the constructor here. There should be a constructor that just takes in, yeah, XY width height. Alright, so I'm going to do that. So X, I'm just going to mark these all as 0, and then the it was width and then height, I believe. Yep, width. Let's mark the width there and the height as just like 15. Alright, and then I'm going to go back to here and replace the bounds here. Now this is going to cause a problem because these now both have the same X and Y coordinates, which is no good. So if I were to run this after resolving our problems down here, which is rectangle cannot be resolved to a type because I didn't import it. There we go. save, and run again. We'll see the way that this now looks. This isn't unexpected. It's much smaller, and they're both on top of each other. We don't have each box now. So let's get rid of that. And then we have to think about how we're going to add each of these fields. Now, instead of setting the whole thing here, we could just leave it as is, and then, for example, we could create a method which will eventually move into a different class called add text field, and it takes in a JFrame. Okay, and all I'm going to have this do text put in is replace all these. So I'm going to cut this out and move it up here and do that there, and then we won't need this either, so we're not going to use any of that. Instead, we're going to use this. Okay, and then we've got our bounds here, but that's not super useful anymore, so let's look at our setters here. We want to set the position, really, but it looks like we can't do that. Is there set X? No. Is there set... What can we look at? Let's go through our sets here. Editable, enabled, focus, font, inheritance, location. That's what we want. Set location. We're going to set this to... we'll just leave that at 0, 0, and then what we're going to have is a public static counter here, which says text field, capital F, text field count, and we're going to set that to 0. And then all I'm going to do is set this one here to whatever it currently is. So I'm not going to undo it. It's X position. Get X, and then for its Y position we're going to just do text field 1 dot get Y, and we're going to multiply that by text field count. And there may actually be a way to get it from here instead. So if we look at the F here and we do get, let's see, we can get component count, but that's going to get us a bunch of different components later on. Right now we only have text, but if we have images and stuff, that can mess with it. Get components, we can get the whole list of components. So we can get into that if we want to automatically pull this number amount, but instead we're just going to kind of hack it in here and say after adding it, test field count plus plus, just add 1. Alright, and that will make it so that on the first call, count, and we want this to be main.textFieldCount. Nope, still not recognized. What am I doing here? Times text field count cannot be resolved. Create constant text field count. Yes. Private static final. Oh, of course. I'm forgetting my my type. Okay. So text field count here and here. And so after we add a button, the first time this will just be get Y times 0, and the second time it'll be times 1, and so on. So it should, if we get rid of all these extra files open, we go to our constants. Instead of setting these to 0 and 0, let's set them to 25, and since the height of these is 15, let's set the space they're allowed to 20, and that should leave about 5 between each of them. So now down here in our main, I'm going to grab our method. So add text field, pass in F, and give it the name, and then add text field F, give it the age. Alright, and then we'll run that, not debug, and see what we get. So now we got two text boxes. Now I notice we've got a background for the frame and a different background for the text, but we can fix that later. But for now, we've got two text boxes taking in the information we want. Good. And since this is automatically set the position, the Y position, every time we add a button, it'll keep going down. Now this doesn't account for, like, you know, if you're dragging your window around and doing crazy things like that. But again, this is just a simple little toy. We're not building a mobile app here, so that's fine. All right, so now we've made it easier to keep adding new text fields. Let's format it a little more, because right now it's just showing up on the page without any kind of label. So what I want is for these, rather than to be the actual values, these are all labeled label, right? So for this one, I want it to be the name. And for this one, we want age. So that's how we can do it real simply. But then we end up with this kind of problem here. Just refresh the source. So if we get a look here, let me zoom in on this. It's not formatted very nicely. See, because this is age, it's only 3 characters, and this is like, you know, 4. These aren't aligned, so we're going to end up with text kind of all over the place. And that could be okay, but I think I'd rather have the labels down one side, and then at a fixed position later I'd have the text popping out by its side. So for that, we're going to need 2 different labels. 2 different text fields to add, rather. So right now I've got our labels over here, and then similarly I'm going to want one for the values. So label value bounds, and for this one we're going to put the X at some fixed distance away. Since this one is at 100 width, we'll want it at least 100, so let's do, how about 110? And then the height and the Y positions can stay the same. All right. So now we've got a button being added in a kind of column methodology. We can change this to be label count. And we could do something similar, just duplicate this. Rename this. So that's add label. And we could add another one where instead of adding labels, we're adding text fields, and it basically does the same thing using the other rectangle and a different one here. So for this one, we'll call it value count. And we want to use down here value count, and we want this to be called add value. And instead of label bounds, we want label value bounds. So now when I add this in, we're going to have name and age, and then we're going to also add value name. And just to keep these kind of organized for now, we'll put them like this. And then let's take a look at how that runs. After, that didn't work out right, and that's because back up here, we need to change this also from label count to value count. So we're going to run that. And it's not coming out exactly how I expected. That's okay. So what we have is that the name box is way bigger. the label boxes. It's way bigger than expected. So back in our constants, we set the X position of the value box to be 110, but we set the X position of the first box to be 25 and then go out 100. So that's actually 125. So we need to change this, so instead of 110, it's at least 125. So we'll do 135. And then just run that again. Refresh the capture, and there we go. So now we've got it in a more formatted manner, where we've got one label and then one field. Okay, and then we can apply formatted text options to that, just as we saw in the Swing library docs. So that's good. All right. What else do we need next? So we've got buttons and fields added pretty easily. Right now we're just reading the text from like basically the input. So what more do we want? Well, one, let's kind of note down some features in our main file here. Let's come down here and let's just note down some features. It's kind of documenting what we want. So for one, we want better text formatting. Colored, larger, alignment. Okay. What else do we want? Better alignment. We want a better font, because right now we're just using that serif that's built in. Okay. So that should be good for the text. We also want better background. So what does that mean? Well, we want the text background and window background to not necessarily match, but mesh. So we could have it as a white box on top of some background, but maybe we'll want like a white box on top of a blue background, or we'll want, I think I want an image for the background, and then we'll either want the background for the text to be transparent, or that's likely to be hard to read, so we'll want some kind of easy to read but not too disruptive background for the text, so that it meshes well with the image background. Okay, we want the text to be loaded in from a file. Okay, rather than just typing it in here. I'll just note JSON there because that's probably what we want to do. What else do we need here? So we got our box, right? It's got the two labels and the two field values. It's got automatic spacing going down. We're going to want the background. We want to make sure that it's loading in a little more dynamically. Eventually, this is much later on, but we'll want multiple pages. Okay, and we'll want a page flip button or key. You left, right arrows, or we'll put some buttons on the screen that'll do it. And that'll let us flip through the pages so we can see multiple sheets. What else can we get then? I find it's good to just take notes of what you're thinking of and what you're planning to do. So once we take a break and come back, I'll have an idea of what I was aiming to do next. Because right now I think this is a pretty good stopping point. Made some progress. You know, we got some text up on a screen. It's formatted. Everything is in one big class at the moment, which is obviously not ideal. So in terms of code quality, just for making it easier to maintain this, split into separate classes. Okay, so it's a bit easier to use. All right. For the background here, we want an image for the background. Actually, I didn't note that down. That is going to be the case. And then, again, since it's just a simple little app, I think that's about everything that we need, or at least enough to work on next time I get to this. So yeah, I'm thinking I'll come back to this tomorrow and just put another hour in and see, you know, how much of this I can get done. And if we get this done, then, you know, add some more. So yeah, let's just take another look at the beautiful application we've built today. Yeah, that's right. It's a nice little form with a a huge box around it. Nice big box. A whole bunch of wasted space, and then tiny little text boxes with not matching backgrounds. But you know what? It's incremental. You know, you build the crappy little parts first, and you keep building on it, and you know, it looks better and better as you go. So no reason to judge it as if it's a final product yet. All right. That I think is again where I want to stop today. It's been about an hour, which is about as much as my voice can take at the moment. You know, until the endurance builds up. But yeah, it's been fun getting this going. Get to play with a new library. I haven't used Swing before. It looks pretty simple, especially for a simple use case like this. It's got a lot of nice built-in functions as well, like we can just immediately start going down the list and get formatted text, location, font, set all the different colors, set alignments and stuff like that. We'll have to get into the parent-child relationship at some point, because right now these objects are children of the JFrame object, and that kind of dictates their position. So, you know, if we had a window inside of a window, that could cause problems. We'll also, if we get into multiple pages, we'll have to decide if we're going to want to have a whole object, an instance of the whole page stored, and then flip between those instances, or if we want to just have one instance and flip its values. So, for example, when we click the right arrow button to go to the next page, is this going to change this value, or is it going to change the whole box to load in a different instance of these? So, you know, we'll get into those technical implications once we get down to the nitty-gritty and we get into a little more complex functionality of paging. We're also going to want the JSON importing, so we're going to have to get a library for that from Maven. But there's some good libraries out there, and last I checked, so there can only be better ones now, right? So we'll have to take a look at that once we start searching around on the net. So that's a common part of any development work, is just searching around on the net for the different libraries you want to use, and how to use them, and new ways to use them, because things get deprecated. So, you know, we'll have to be prepared for that. And to help with the pop-ups next time, I'll prepare my desktop so that I can actually share the whole thing. The resolution on this monitor, I think, is conflicting with what I have in OBS, so it doesn't allow it to just pop up on the screen like everything else does. So I'll have to look into that for next time. But in the meantime, I just want to say thanks for anybody who watches this, and I look forward to anybody who joins me next time to see the completion of this application, this little toy that we're building here. That's it then.